And a good day to you, Explorer Nation. John Lynskey here, Season 4, Episode 14 of Looking Back with Lynskey. Very honored today to have my dear friend, the voice of Columbus High School, the voice of Dade County. He's 305. He's soon going to be nationwide, even worldwide. Not only is he the voice of Columbus, he's the voice of Inter Miami CF. He's called state championship games. He does every introduction at Columbus, every pep rally, everything. He is the voice for all seasons. From the class of 2003, my dear friend, Michael Marinelli. Mike, welcome. Actually, welcome back to Looking Back with Lynskey. Yes.
Glad to be back, John. I got to give you a proper introduction here. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 14.
There it is.
You got it.
Michael was actually the third guest in Season 1, way back, pre-COVID even, Michael.
Definitely the youngest first guest, right?
Yes,
after absolutely. Clutter and O'Brien, you know, that's.
Yes, we went from the Stone Age to the new millennium, no question about that. So, you know, you've been at Columbus 16 years.
Yep.
4 years as a teacher, a dozen years as our admissions director, best admissions director in the state of Florida. We have a waiting list. You work so hard to attract kids to Columbus High School. The open house event, the little visits you do to the school, you are the Columbus ambassador, and you're great at it. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about your alter ego. The man behind the microphone. You have carved out.
We call him Mike on the mic.
Actually. Mike on the mic. Yes, indeed.
Undefinitely intended.
But, you know, and completely accurate. And it's amazing how people find, I'm not even going to call this a side hustle. It's not a side hustle. This is a second profession. You spend as much time doing events and calling games and handling things at Columbus as you do in your regular job. You know, you do baseball games, you do football games, you do basketball games, you do intros. The intro for the Columbus Connects the other night with Chris Paul and Highsmith, you know, was tremendous. The one you did for my event last year was off the chain. It's what you do, and not blowing smoke, you do it well. You have a knack for it. It's a gift. It's a gift you work at. Yeah, but it's a gift. So why don't we start, Mike? How did you end up falling into this, and where did the love for, you know, speaking and all of that come from? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's crazy how things happen. But so as a kid, I went to the Ringling Brothers Circus. Okay.
Yeah,
okay. I was about 3 years old, maybe even younger. I'm not sure, but I think I was about 3 years old. Went to the Ringling Brothers Circus, and my parents took me there. And the only thing I took out of that was the ringmaster, right? The guy in the middle with the microphone, you know, and the cord. And then he's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ringling Brothers Circus." And like, I remember as a kid, that guy just standing in the middle there. I was like, I want to be that guy. Like, it's crazy how I remember this as a kid. And then, so I get home, and I think I might've been, you know, like I said, 2 or 3 years old. There's video of me. I'd have to find this somewhere, but it would be great to see. But my parents used to show me when I was a little bit older. They would show me videos of me inside the old house there with a jump rope, like my sister's jump rope or something that I stole from the playroom. And I got the jump rope there, and I'm going, "Ladies and gentlemen." Like, I can barely even talk, but I was already announcing back at the age of 2 or 3. So I guess it all kind of started right there, you know?
Okay. And I'm sure you were adorable. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, I'm still adorable, let's be honest, but
yes.
Far more hair and, you know, on my head and less on my face for sure. Yeah.
And your voice is lowered, which is good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You don't want me to still be out there going, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Columbus." That'd be a little weird.
So as you're growing up, when you would watch sporting events, because obviously you love sports, Did you watch the game for the announcers or a little
So
bit of both?
like
What did
any,
you do?
yeah. So I mean, again, like any little kid, right? You go to, I grew up in the Orange Bowl, right? My parents were
Sure.
season ticket holders of the Miami Hurricanes. I went to UM. I'm a UM grad. I love it. Go Canes. But um, what was interesting is I grew up in the Orange Bowl listening to J-Ro, right? Like, so that's who I heard all the time throughout my life as a little kid growing up in the Orange Bowl. I didn't see the Hurricanes lose until I was 8 years old.
That's
So
true. Yeah.
this whole portion of my childhood, happened at the Orange Bowl, and I remember just listening to the announcer, and you just hear it in the background. It's part of your childhood. You're growing up with it, and then obviously I would watch a lot of sports growing up. My dad was a big football fan, so we'd watch the Dolphins, we'd watch the Hurricanes, but then we'd also watch just football in general. And I remember Keith Jackson, like all those guys that
Oh
I
yeah.
look up to now as like famous announcers, John Madden and Pat Summerall and all these guys. You grow up listening to them, and you say to yourself, wow, that's like that. I want to be Al Michaels one day, right? Like, it's just so cool, like to me. And so that's where it all kind of stemmed from, right? Like the circus, and then turned into sports. And then I was like, man, I really enjoyed that part of the game. Like I like hearing it for whatever reason. And then I also started to listen to the bad ones, and you're like, man, so this guy's not that good,
Learn what not to do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's important to also not like to be noticed, but not be noticed at the same time, which I think is one of the hardest things to do as an announcer. I'm a firm believer in like you have to let the moment happen, right? So, and I think we may talk about the state championship play in a little while, but I've been a part of so many captivating sports moments in my career of announcing that you tend to like have to sit back and let it happen because you don't want to be in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
That was always one of my thought processes. I thought the good ones are always out of the spotlight, but at the same time, you remember the call.
Well, you remember the call. Do you believe in miracles?
Exactly.
That was perfect. It was a perfect delivery. I hear what you're saying. But Michael, there's a big difference between a network broadcaster and a stadium announcer. Yeah. Which one did you prefer, one over the other, or?
So it's funny. I mean, how life works, right? I mean, obviously, like I always loved doing play-by-play and stuff like that. Like that was kind of my passion, and I love to do it. But life kind of works out in a different way, right? I wound up becoming a public address announcer just by chance, right? Like it all started here at Columbus, of course, right? Believe it or not, it was actually there was another announcing job. I give Butch Diano a lot of credit because he was one of my first promoters, right? But my first actual announcing gig, and it's kind of funny. Maura Herholtz over at Lourdes Academy. My sister was a softball player, in high school, and I was a little bit younger. I think I might have been in 7th grade, and she was in 9th grade playing softball. And you go to a Saturday game, and they had a little speaker there, and and a microphone, and nobody would say anything, and it was kind of boring. And I was like, my parents would make me go to watch, women's softball all Saturday long. So I'd be sitting there as a 7th grader going, this is, no offense to women's softball out there, but it wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
So eventually somebody was like, well, does anybody want to announce? And I was a 7th grade kid, 12 years old, 13 years old, whatever it was, picked up the microphone and go, hey, now batting number 17, and everybody's going, what the heck? I was just messing around, I was just a kid playing around, and everybody's like, you're pretty good at this. And then it sort of jumped into, I took a bunch of years off, didn't do it for a while, went to high school at Columbus. And then the rest is history when Butch Diano came a calling one day.
So Butch was the first person at school to ask you to call some. What was it? Do you remember?
Yeah. So my senior year of high school, I had finished playing football. We get bounced. We finished our season, right? And then all of a sudden, it's basketball season. It's right around basketball time, and Butch Diano remembers me from the pep rallies. I would always get up at the during the pep rallies and grab the mic and sort of hype the crowd up. I was always the Columbus hype man, as I still am today.
Yeah. You were an idiot. Yes.
Yeah. I just go around jumping around like a crazy fool and not care about anything. And you know what? Hey, it turned out okay. but I picked up the microphone, and then I guess Butch saw it and was like, "Hey, if you ever want to do a basketball game, come on out." And I had a bunch of friends that played on the team, and I said, "All right, well, let me do this thing." I always liked Mike Biamonte from the Heat.
Sure.
I looked up to him. I always said, you know what, that guy, he does it right. He makes the game fun for people, and the fans recognize him. And I was like, I could be like that, So I kind of took a lot of notes from him, from J-Ro, and then, I incorporated into Columbus basketball. And then, of course, once the winter season ended, this all starts to become a thing. Baseball had a bunch of guys, John Jay, a lot of my classmates that played on that 03 state championship team. Yeah. I could honestly say that I announced John Jay's first at bat as a senior at Columbus. I mean, that was pretty cool.
Sure.
Over in a little trailer on top of the dugouts at Columbus. We used to have a little trailer. I swear to you, I thought that thing it was all rusted. I had to climb a little ladder to get up there, and it was like shaking as I'm walking up there. I'm going, oh my God, Webb, I'm not going to
die.
I'm going to die up here. So this was pre-laptops. You're playing off of like CDs. I mean, there's no MP3s back then. No. Like this is like, so I'm just DJing. I'm putting in music, and I'm doing my thing. Now batting, we try to get walk-ups like on the CDs. Like,
yeah,
crazy. Like when you look back at it, but it all started there, and then it moves from the slow progression from middle school to high school, and then I go to college, and I start doing a little bit in college.
What did you do in college, Mike?
So at University of Miami, I started to say, hey, I can do this, So I actually wound up doing a couple of women's soccer games at ACC soccer while I was at did some baseball actually later on. Once I graduated from college, I started doing FIU baseball. I got that gig. So I announced a great season with FIU baseball. We won the Sun Belt Conference that year. We were on ESPN for a hit streak. His name was Garrett Whittles.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Had over a 50-something game hit streak, I think it was. It's all over TV. So it was an amazing year. The FIU baseball had probably one of the better years they've had. But I announced that season, and it was pretty cool. And it all kind of started from there. And then obviously I started doing, when I've been at Columbus, ever since I returned back for 16 years, I've been announcing games and pep rallies and all that.
What was your first paying gig? Did they pay you at or FIU?
Yeah. So in college they pay a little bit,
okay.
Not nearly enough of what, for what you would, I guess, try and make. I mean, if you're in this for the money, listen, it's not, public address announcers don't make a whole lot of money, right? You got to love what you do, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But I think as long as you understand that, you're not the man, right? You're not the star of the show, and you go in there with humble mindset. I think it all works out, and people tend to like it.
Yeah,
it gives the game a different feel when if there's nobody there, speaking, no music, it's dead. The atmosphere is dead. So if you're out there and you're having fun, it gives people, I think, something to talk about in the game, and kind of those dull moments of the game go by a little bit quicker.
Yeah, you're there to accentuate things.
Yeah,
to
flavor on the game.
Flavor, yes, exactly. Back to what you were referring to or talking about earlier, Michael. I think it's important. Everybody has their influences. Everybody has their role models. Everybody steals from somebody else. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Be it a musician, an artist, an athlete, actors. Everybody borrows, but at the same time, at some point, you better become you, or it's not going to work. So, how did you start to develop your own style? What do you think of some of your trademarks, Mike?
So I think obviously I have a pretty booming voice. Like when I talk normally, whatever, I have a little bit of an announcer voice, but I'm not, like, it's not something I'm really trying at. But like when I actually go through with something, you'll hear, now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. You can really pick it up. So you got that booming voice. I think that's one of my trademarks. But then, through the years of announcing games and actually going through so many games, you start to pick up little things. So, obviously basketball is probably one of my favorite ones to announce, believe it or not, because it's the most fast paced.
Sure.
For a public address announcer, you have to stay, in the game. You got to be in the zone watching what's going on. And so, like, little by little, I started picking up little things like, when Benny Fragella, right, for instance, hits a three, he's he's a Cuban kid from Miami. I go uno, dos, tres, right? Give him 3 points. I've never heard that. I feel like that's my own little trademark thing with 3-pointers, right? So Benny Fragella hits a 3, Benny Fragella, uno, dos, tres. And then, let's say another guy that may not be Hispanic hits a 3, right? I go, let's say Malik Abdullahi for 3, 1, 2, 3, and it's just kind of like my own little way of, hey, this is, or like somebody gets blocked, gets a shot blocked. I'll say something like access denied. Like you're trying to hack into our computer there. It's not happening. No, access denied, bro.
I think like anything, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. How much homework do you put in to these games? What is your routine, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, the higher up you go, obviously now with Inter Miami CF, it takes a lot more work, right? Like you're doing a lot more research, as opposed to, a high school game. I can just, I can honestly roll up and just go with it. Right. Like it comes easy to me. It's natural to me. I can pretty much ad lib almost everything. Now, when you get to the collegiate and professional level, there's a run of show, right? There's a script that you got to follow. There's sponsors that you got to hit. So there's all these little things that are, that when you go up a level, it's expected that you would know. And, my biggest thing, especially in soccer, is pronunciations, right? Like, I'll never forget, this is a funny story, but when I did some FIU basketball, right? I did a women's basketball game at FIU. And you would think, women's basketball would be easy. But what I didn't know when I got there is every single girl on the team was like from Croatia.
Yeah, Eastern European. Perfect.
So it was like, Catalina Kaskavackovic with the 3. And I'm like, oh, man. I'm like sweating every time I had to say a name. Like the starting lineups, I'm like, please, can somebody get me some phonetics here? Like, this is like, it was tough. But, I think that's the hardest thing is to do the research on the pronunciations of the names, because you never want to butcher somebody's name, right?
No, of course not.
It gets embarrassing. Like we'll be at games sometimes, and like you hear like Malik Abdullahi, right? Like I said his name wrong for the first year, and he never told me anything. So it's like I always want to make sure that I'm saying the name right. Always, I think that's important. It makes the parents feel good, and they'll let you know too when you screw up. If it's like John Jacobo and you're calling him John Jacobo, the parents are going to be all, hey, my son's name is Jacobo. Okay.
Yeah. And that's understandable. I want to get back to Inter Miami CF in a second, but there's a big difference in what you do, though, being a stadium announcer where, less is more and you're coloring, to being an event hype artist, and nobody hypes a crowd better than you. How do you flip that switch?
Well, I think you take elements of like from big moments in the game, and you sort of take that as the introduction, right? Like you bring that same vibe, that same feel. You want to hype the crowd up, right? Like I again, another idol of mine is, and you'll know exactly who he is as soon as I do this, right? Let's get ready to rumble, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, Michael Buffer.
Yeah.
Growing up watching, Mike Tyson and all these guys, right? You see Michael Buffer come out in the tuxedo, and I go, man, that's cool. Like, so I take a little bit of Michael Buffer, I take a little bit of Mike Marinelli, a little bit of Mike Biamonte, a bunch of Mikes actually. It's kind of funny.
That's interesting, isn't it?
A lot of microphone guys, yeah.
Yeah, and you're not embarrassed, afraid, whatever the word is, when we're doing a pep rally or whatever, to be 17 years old again and running up and down the stands and running around, just being a total idiot.
Well, I think our kids feed off of it. You know what I mean? They love it, dude. They love to see this old chubby guy in a shirt and tie running up and down like an absolute buffoon. I mean, that's Columbus for you, right? Like if we're not doing that, we're not doing it right.
Correct.
I mean, I remember as a kid, the late great Dave Eisenberg.
God rest his soul.
I mean, talk about energy. I mean, so you learn from the greats, man. You see Dave running up and down the stairs, and getting crazy at the pep rallies and stuff as a kid, you know, with the sign, Avi,
Yeah.
Avi. And I go, dude, I got to, you know, he passed the torch on to us. Like, I got to do this. I got to continue this, you know, and hopefully one day some young whippersnapper is going to come around and hopefully take over me one day, you know? I mean, come on.
We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's what's great about that's
just
what's
like
great
you
about
and the many greats before you at Columbus, you know?
Yeah, and we pass it down, and that's what we're very proud of, and we're very good at it. And being an idiot at Columbus is ageless, you know, and you do that better than anyone. And
Hey, thank you. Sort of.
You're quite welcome. We're proud
You
of
just
you.
called me an idiot, but that's fine. You know, no worries, no worries.
But in a loving way.
Yeah, of course.
You got the opportunity, and we actually talked about this before the game. You got to call the state championship game.
Oh man.
Talk about what it's like to call the game for your school.
Listen, you know, last year, so we got the contract at Drive Pink to do the state championships for the bigger schools, right? And you know, obviously, when my boss Lou called me and he goes, "Hey, man, like, you know, you're the announcer at Drive Pink. Like, can you do football?" I go, "Absolutely, I can do football." All right, that's what I played. You know, that's what I'm most familiar with. And so I agreed to do the state championships last year, and we were one win away. We were so close to getting there, and then Venice beat us, and then I announced Venice in the state championship last year, which went on to win the states last year. But I remember as the buildup came around, I'm going, "Oh man, I might have a chance. I might have a chance to announce Columbus, my home team," you know, and that was pretty cool. And then all of a sudden this year, we go on a run, and I go, "We got a shot. We got a shot to do this." And sure enough, we had an amazing year, and we get to the championship game again. And so when I realized, I'm like, man, I get to actually announce the state championship with Columbus High School in the game. That was a really sweet moment for me as an announcer. You know, it's kind of like all this hard work, and then now you're in the biggest moment, you know, for the school. So,
you know, and you were on the edge at two different times of either having to declare the other team the winner.
Oh yeah.
What was going through your head when Apopka lined up for that last second field goal? And if we don't block it, we're done. What are you thinking?
So first off, I mean, obviously, as a public address announcer, you know, especially in the late playoff games, you got to be neutral, right? I mean, you can't. You're hired by the state of Florida. You can't show who you're rooting for, right? But deep down inside, obviously, I bleed red, white, and blue. So I am like on the edge of my seat. You know, I felt like I was pretty good most of the game. I was very neutral.
You were.
Popka scores a touchdown. I'm promoting Apopka. I'm giving him just as much love as Columbus, obviously in a begrudging way. Well, you know, deep down inside. But listen, hey man, kudos to them. You know, and I'm not going to be a homer. I would never do that. So I try to keep it as professional as possible. But yeah, when Popka lines up for that field goal, and it happened right in front of me too, I'm thinking, you know, there was a point actually too in the game when the clock didn't stop. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I do.
So, yeah, and that, I guess when the helmet came off, you know.
Yeah, come on, man.
Right. So I'm screaming. I literally had the microphone off, and I start screaming. I forgot the referee's in the corner of the room. I'm going, "Stop the clock! Stop the clock!" And then the ref's just looking at me like, what the hell's this announcer? You know, obviously who he's rooting for. You know, I'm going, "Oh man, I got caught."
You're lucky you didn't get flagged.
Yeah, right. So, but then, yeah, you know, he lines up for the field goal. Obviously, the field goal gets blocked. I'm pumping my fist. I'm excited. I'm thinking, all right, we got a shot at this now. And then, obviously, the last play of the game. I mean, that was just that's one of the coolest sports moments I've ever been a part of. I mean, obviously, the first state championship, I was there, but I was on the sideline.
Yeah,
a little different than this one where I actually had the call. You know.
Yeah, and you allowed yourself to revel in that moment. You could hear
I watched the play happen.
Yeah.
You know, I go hand off to Cedric Irvin, hand off to, you know, to
AJ. Yeah.
To AJ Ariano to Mendoza into the end zone, touchdown. I'm throwing papers. I'm doing this. Like, you know, the papers were flying down. Like the camera guys are all going nuts. Like, because all the Inter Miami guys I normally work with, they know that I work for Columbus, and they're like, they're just happy for me. Like it was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, and so you have, of the sports, obviously you played football, so yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
Baseball's baseball.
Yeah, these
And
are all
it's
sports that I played growing up. So I played baseball, I played
exactly.
basketball. Obviously, I wasn't, amazing at those sports, but like, I wasn't an amazing football player. I was decent. I played. I
Oh, come on,
started.
Mike. You were pretty good on a
I was
pretty good
okay,
team.
but like,
Yeah.
most of the time people think of, oh, announcers are just, just a nerd with a microphone, but
Well,
like,
they think
I actually enjoyed playing the sports. So I like it, and I know and I'm knowledgeable of the sports that I try to announce. And obviously soccer is a little bit different for me, but
yeah.
I guess we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Let's talk. Yeah, let's segue into that. A, how did you get the gig in the first place? And B, how much prep did you have to do to learn the game of soccer?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, I did women's soccer before, right? At But again, collegiate soccer is very different than professional soccer. The rules are different. There's so many different things. So the whole thing is a very Columbus story, very Miami Columbus mafia story, right?
Yeah,
in true Columbus fashion, right? So I'm sitting down at my desk, and all of a sudden, little Georgie Moss walks into my office, and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I go, "What do you mean I'm doing? I'm in my office. I'm working." He goes, "No. I need you to record this demo for me." And he hands me a demo, and he goes, "Read this script, record it, send it to me as soon as you can." I go, "Oh, okay. I wonder what this is about, right?" So of course I go in true Columbus fashion. I go to Delgado, right? Omar Delgado, CCNN Live. I go, I don't know how to record anything, right? So I go over to Omar Delgado. He's got I'm literally in the closet of the old CCNN room, which is now the game room.
Yeah.
And so I go up into the closet up there, and I'm literally recording, starting lineups just off the top of my head, just trying to, I don't even know half the players. And I'm just like, all right, yeah, this seems like a cool thing. So I start doing all these demos. I get it to him. The next day I get a call from one of the ladies who works for Inter Miami, and she goes, "Hey, we want you to come in and announce a USL game, get a feel for it, to see." It's basically like a tryout, like an audition. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go, and not knowing what to expect. I mean, I just literally just jumped into professional soccer. It was kind of crazy how it all worked out. And you make mistakes, right? There's no way you can expect what's going to happen. But obviously, I'm super nervous, jumping into a new environment, and professional announcing is very different than regular announcing, right? You have a headset on, and this is one of the cool things that, like, I guess behind the scenes that you never really know what's going on, but you have a headset on, and you're on the same feed as all the camera guys and the producer. So the producer's in your ear speaking. And so basically you have to almost like multitask in your brain, where you're reading the script in front of you, but somebody's going, "Hey, we're going to go to Heineken next. We're going to go to Hay Club next." And they're going with the next stuff. And so you have to be ready to, jump to the next thing, or scratch that. And they're in your ear while you're reading the script that you're supposed to be reading. So it's almost like you have to have two brains going on at the same time.
No,
So
because that's got to be very difficult. Sure.
Yeah, but you get used to it. Like anything, you get used to that. And then, so I did the USL game, and they liked what they heard. They liked the energy. I guess they had somebody previously that just didn't bring the energy that they wanted. And obviously, my booming voice and my excitement and my passion for sports, it came through. And they were like, "Hey, we want you to do the Inter Miami game next week." I was like, "What?" So just like that, I was a professional announcer. I jumped from high school down to the pros, like Kobe Bryant, baby.
Right. Yeah. LeBron James. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, man. That was a surreal moment. I still kept my press pass from that first game.
As well, you should have.
As like, hey, man, this is, and any momentous like announcing gig that I get now, I kind of save a souvenir almost, just to look back and, hey, one day I'll be an old man and, announcing minor league baseball in Jupiter somewhere, playing golf, right? Like I swear to you, that's like my dream one day, is just to be an old man, playing golf and announcing minor league baseball. But just sitting there and look back and say, man, I announced Barcelona. Like, I mean, come on, man.
Come on, man. Exactly.
Like
Exactly.
I've got goals maybe to do a World Cup game in 2026, like all these things now that are happening that I'm like, you know what, one day I'll look back and go, man, all that time that you put in, people are listening, which is kind of cool.
It's very cool, actually. So, Michael, walk us through a typical game for you at Inter Miami. What is your routine consist of? What do you do? What time you get there? All that.
Yeah. So let's say you got a 7:30 game. You usually get there about 3 hours prior.
Okay.
You got to account for parking. You got to go through security. So I go through security. I pick up a radio because the way it works is they'll send from the field, like it's called competition radio. You'll have the guy who works for Inter Miami who will call up the subs to me. He'll call up the goals. He'll call up yellow cards, all that kind of stuff. So from the referee who's on the field, he'll give it to our guy who then relays it up to me. So that way I can make the call. But at the same time, it's tough because they're not always able to do it right away. So you have to still know what's going on.
Okay.
You have to know who scores the goals and stuff like that. But anyway, so we get up there about 3 hours prior. I'm presented with the script for the day, which is, it's about this thick, right? You got all the sponsorships you got to hit. If we have a specific, famous singer doing the national anthem, you got to get ready for that. Like this past Saturday, we had a moment of silence for Anton Walks, who was a MLS player who passed away recently.
Yeah.
So you got to give it its due. You want to read through it. You don't want to fumble up a moment of silence to honor somebody who passed away. So all these little things, you're going to go ahead and preview the script. Look at that. They feed us, right? They give us usually a nice lunch, sandwich and some chips or something. And then from there, you meet. We do a pre-show meeting. So we treat it like a show. That's what we call it. We call it a show because it's essentially
you have a production meeting.
Yeah, we have a production meeting. We have all the camera guys in place, all the producers, the supers. The guys who put the little logos at the bottom and stuff on the televisions and all that. So we meet with everybody and we kind of go over the run of show. We say, hey, listen, that we're kicking off at 7:39 p.m. and you better be on time because Apple TV is going off at 7:39, whether you like it or not, because we have the new MLS package with Apple TV. So you got to be on point for television, man. You got to be to the minute. And this is scripted all the way from 6:05 when gates open till 7:39. Everything is scripted.
Okay.
So it's pretty, it's broken down. And all the meanwhile, you're still trying to get the lineups for the day because the soccer lineups, it's crazy how they do it. But, the starting lineup, starting 11 doesn't come out until about 20 minutes before kick. So they'll warm up, and then in warm-ups, the coach kind of evaluates and goes, all right, I want these 11 guys, right? So you don't get warm-ups sometimes about 20 minutes before kick, which is crazy chaos, right? Because you're then trying to scramble and get your notes ready for who's actually going to make it onto the field. And, it's a little bit stressful, but I've since gotten used to that and kind of know more or less when things are going to happen. And then once the kick happens, I mean, honestly, soccer is, believe it or not, there's not a whole lot going on during the game because you can't really call play-by-play stuff during the match. But like I've got a couple new signature stuff, signature things that I do at the stadium for like extra time, so I'll call yellow cards, substitutions, goal calls. My first goal call was pretty awesome. Like that's a memorable moment, right? Like, I get to scream at the top of my lungs, and that's an Inter Miami CF goal, the whole thing. So you got to practice your signature goal call, right?
Yeah.
So all that kind of happened, and it's just it's really fun, man. Like it's a blessing to be doing what you love, and heck, I get paid to watch sports, which is like
there you go.
Most people would love to do that, right?
Now, Mike, it is entertainment and it is live. And if you do something often enough, there's going to be an occasion when things get sideways. When you've got to improvise. If you had any of those, it doesn't have to necessarily be soccer. If you had any of those moments where things have gotten totally sideways and you got to go, oh, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the craziest things is when you're doing like a live event, right?
Yeah.
And there's like I've done other events at the stadium where it may not be a game, but there's other live events going on, and you got a lot of moving parts, and sometimes people don't show up on time, so you got to improvise a little bit, right? So you have to be able to adjust and and pivot when you need to, right? Because anything can happen, right? It's a live production, and you got to be ready to be able to adjust. I would say things do go wrong sometimes. Like, one time I'll never forget. This is one of my biggest like mistakes, right, that I've ever done, which is kind of funny. But like, luckily I didn't really get in too much trouble, right? But like, I left a microphone on once, so it's a hot mic, right?
Oh,
Thank the
Jesus.
Lord I didn't say what I normally would say is,
Jesus.
something bad happened or whatever. You say something you shouldn't have said, but like I had a hot mic on. I remember the guy from the ESPN truck calls me. He goes, "Hey, your mic's hot." And I'm going, "Oh, geez." So there's all these things that you have to be aware of, So now you better believe I am always looking for that red light to make sure that red light is not on in front
How
of me.
many careers have a hot mic ended?
Yeah, exactly. So that could have been the end of Mike Marinelli, the Miami CF. It was like my second game too. So I was like, man,
Oh,
it would have been a
geez.
very short career. Can you imagine I get back to Columbus, I go, "Hey, John, it's over, man. My dream's over. 2 games in.
And then I
Columbus,
just would ask,
go,
I,
Mike."
I would have said, no, what'd you say, Mike?
Yeah,
What'd
yeah.
you say?
Thank God I didn't say anything bad, but yeah,
You
that's
know,
always my biggest fear now is like always turn off the microphone because you never know what, maybe not what I'm saying, but other people in the room, they don't know that. So
yeah, no, you're
yeah,
absolutely
you got
right.
to be careful, man. There's so many things, and nowadays, you got to be careful what you say, right? Like it lives forever in the cloud, right? And so you always got to be careful with all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you raised a good point a few minutes ago, Mike. Do you necessarily think it matters or not? Because I'm thinking both ways. If you've played the sport you're calling, because, for example, Bob Costas never played anything in his life, and he was as good as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
John Madden was one of the greatest coaches of all time, and he was as good as it got. So, what do you think about that, Mike?
I mean, listen, I always say, like, I'm a golf coach here at Columbus, right?
Yeah, which I was going to ask you about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm the golf coach at Columbus, and my golf team is one of the top teams in the state. And my kids always mess with me. They're like, "Oh, coach, you can't beat me in a round of golf." I go, "Absolutely not." I go, "But let me ask you a question. You think Eric Spoelstra could beat LeBron James when they were winning championships?"
It's
And they
all
go,
relative. Yeah.
they go, "No," but he got him to the promised land and he did what he had to do. So I always tell people, look, you don't have to play the sport, at a high level, but you just have to, do a good job at what you do, right?
Well, sometimes, like with golf, you're smart enough to get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to make sure you do your homework, right? Like, you don't want to be somebody who's not prepared for the position, right? So,
Yeah.
Obviously soccer was not my first sport. I didn't, I played it as a 5-year-old, right? Like, that's the last time I played soccer. I didn't watch it a whole lot, but now that I'm in the sport, I have a whole new appreciation for it. And I'm starting to watch more professional soccer. I'm starting to get into it. I'm starting to understand so much more. I'm like a sponge. Like, I'm asking people about it. I'm talking about it. And so it's become something that, like, now even my son's a huge soccer fan. Like, it's so funny. Like, I barely played, but he's really good and he loves soccer. And so that's where now it's just funny how, like, I went from a kid that grew up in the Orange Bowl, and now I'm calling soccer games. Like, it's just, I thought I'd be calling the Hurricanes or the Dolphins or something, but it turned to something completely unexpected. And you know what? Hey,
And never say never, Michael. Never say never.
Yeah.
You are the golf coach, and you are so over the top when you announce. Here's something off the cuff. Be Mike Marinelli calling the Masters right now.
Oh man,
Go ahead.
that'd be
Let's
a
hear it.
dream. By the way, that'd be awesome.
I know.
In fact, I always say, I go, the guy who has the best job in the world, Jim Nance.
Jim Nance, of
If
course.
I could be Jim Nance for like a year, I would be the happiest man, because he does the Final Four.
Yeah.
He does the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And he does the Masters, and he does the signature NFL game every week. I'm like, dude, this guy has my dream job. Like that. I mean, Jim Nance is the man. So, all right.
So do your Augusta.
You want Jim Nance or you want Mike Marinelli?
I want Mike Marinelli at Augusta.
Oh man. All right. Here we go. All right. Welcome to number 18 here at the Masters. Mike Marinelli alongside John Lynskey. John, how's it going out there?
Beautiful day today, spring day in Georgia, Mike. Great to be here with you.
For a green jacket. Let's see. Teeing off here on 18, a little dog leg right, pine trees, to your right and left, bunkers long. If you go long, should be a nice shot here. Right down the fairway. Tiger Woods splits the fairway, going for his 16th major championship.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Oh, I could hear you doing it. And that intro that Jim Nance does every year at Augusta.
Hello, friends. Hello, friends. Welcome to Juniper Springs or whatever it is, you know. Who knows?
The azaleas and everything else.
Azaleas are beautiful. Yeah. Welcome here to the Masters.
Yeah. No, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's like those are iconic voices, you know, that just live in your head. Pretty cool.
Yeah. When you were talking about improvising earlier, do you think your time in the classroom when things go sideways all the time helps you think on your feet?
100%. There's nothing. So I used to joke, you know, when I would get home, my wife's a teacher too. I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
I was a teacher. And so we'd get home and we'd compare, you know, how the day went, right? Back when I was teaching. And she would just laugh at me because I'm like, listen, you know, teaching at Columbus is it's not teaching. It's something different. It's very, very different than what you're doing right now from teaching third grade kids, right? So I was like, you know, I do 5 shows a day. I don't do, you know, 5 periods of teaching, right?
Correct.
So it was literally like almost like stand-up comedy mixed with information, and you just do your best to engage the kids. But yeah, you got to be flexible, man. Like one day the Wi-Fi turns off, and guess what? You can't stream to the TV. So what do? You got to pivot. You got to be able to teach, right? You got to be able to make adjustments on the fly, and that's what I think teachers do the best job at is being prepared for disaster. You know.
Yes.
More than any other profession, because guess what? You know, you can sit at your desk and do other work, but if your lesson plans go sideways, guess what? You're in trouble. You got to manage 30 human beings for that hour and a half or 45 minutes and figure it out.
And
they will test you.
They're like jackals, Michael.
Especially at Columbus, they will test you. They know if you were not prepared. Because I know, because I was one of them. All right. I remember getting a few teachers called out of the classroom as Brother Sheehan over the announcements. Those were good times.
We don't have to mention
Attention. Will the following teachers please report to the attendance office immediately?
You know, when he'd come out freshman year, the voice of God over the announcements.
Oh my Lord, that was perfect.
I think I actually got a teacher to go down. It was pretty awesome.
You did. And yes, you know, and yet here you are, director of admissions.
Funny. Hey, come on to Columbus. It's a great place.
Oh my. What did
pep rallies maybe announce and coach golf. It's not a bad gig.
No, it's not. And how far could you, I mean, everybody has goals. If you could pick one sporting event, Super Bowl, World Series, whatever, what would that be, Michael? It's a tough one. It's like choosing your children. I know.
That's hard. I mean, I think now doing what I do, I think a World Cup would be World Cup would be top, I think, just because of the scale, right? Like you're talking the world, man. Like,
yeah,
you know, a lot of people watch the Masters, a lot of people watch the Super Bowl, but the entire world watches the World Cup, right? So that would be, I think, the top, but maybe like an Olympics, right? Like,
oh, Olympics. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah,
something like that would be that's like iconic that only happens every so often, and you know, I think that'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I'd say it's probably World Cup, Olympics, Masters, and the Super Bowl, right?
How about an NBA
every state championship Columbus is ever involved with after that?
Cool. How about an NBA Finals Game 7?
Oh man, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, just because basketball is my favorite to announce, honestly. Like just because of the back and forth, right? You're the most in the game when you're doing public address. Basketball is a lot of fun. Again, soccer, you can't really talk too much. Football is my passion. Like I love football, but it's, you know, hey, first down, gain of 7 yards on the play. You know, I don't know. Basketball is a constant back and forth.
Particularly with the team we've had the last couple of years. That's got to be just awesome.
Like, you know, I've been announcing now for almost 20 years or more, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so to have this for the last 2 years is like, it's like the Showtime Lakers, man. Like
No, it's above the rim. It's
yeah,
above the rim.
we're so blessed and lucky to have the team that we have. You got Cameron, Caden, you got Benny, Noriega, you got Abdullahi throwing it down. I mean, it's just like, it's showtime. It really is. I said it, the other night at FIU when we played for the regional championship against Deerfield. There was a guy behind me, and from Deerfield, kind of chirping in my ear a little bit, and finally we started to expand on the lead, and I turned around, and I go, "Get ready, it's showtime."
And you were right.
And he started laughing. He goes, "Yeah, you guys are pretty good."
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good.
Yeah,
you have a unique distinction right now, which is pretty cool. Not to put you on the spot, but it is pretty cool. You got a classroom named after you at Columbus High School.
Yeah,
How cool is that? Talk about what it means to have a classmate, dedicate a room. I'm not putting you on the spot, but maybe I am, but it's very cool, Michael.
Listen, I mean, I was completely caught off guard the other day when I found out. I mean, I had no idea. Like,
tell people what happened, Mike.
So, I mean, listen, I do tours all the time, right? I pass by these rooms every day, and all of a sudden, Tom's like, "Hey, come on down. I need to meet with you at this time." I'm like, "Okay, whatever. Am I getting fired? Okay." Finally, I screwed up somewhere. All right, here we go. So they start taking me upstairs. I'm going, "Man, HR's upstairs." I think I'm in trouble. This might be the end. All right, guys, adelante. So we start going up the elevator. We get to the 3rd floor, and we turn right towards HR. I'm going, "Oh boy, this is not good."
Here we go.
Not good. And then we hang a right, and I was like, "Oh, okay, whew. It's the game room. No big deal. No big deal." So they open the door, and there's my best friend Ozzy, who, he and I have known each other since kindergarten, literally since kindergarten. I joke with my friends all the time, like, I taught him English, basically. He didn't, when I met him, in kindergarten, he was an ESOL child. His parents are from Cuba, and hardworking people, sacrificed for him to come here. And, I'll never forget as a kindergartner, I was like, block. So I taught Aussie English. And, we were in the same class together from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. Then obviously in high school, that's impossible, right? But we went to Columbus together for 4 years. He's the best man in my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding. Literally brothers, right? Like we grew up together. And what's funny is, so he's up there waiting for me, and he goes, "Hey, all those years, together, and this is just for all the work that you put in at Columbus, all the hours you put in, you deserve something to be named after you." And I got a little emotional, man. I was like, that's pretty cool, man. It all paid off. And a little known fact, like when we were kids, like, so he was an only child, right? And so I'd go over his house, and what would we do? We'd play video games together. Like, I mean, and so, and that's what he mentioned. He's like, "Listen, man, like, if I was going to donate anywhere, it was going to be that video game thing, because I never had a brother growing up. And, you were my only brother that I had. And so what would we always do? We go to you go to my house, and we play Sega, we play PlayStation, whatever, Nintendo, whatever it was. And we play for hours and hours and hours. But that was our bond together. We played Madden, we played, basketball, whatever the sport was, or whatever the game was, Sonic the Hedgehog, whatever. We were playing together as little kids all the way up to through high school. And, we still even play today. We still play a little bit today. Yeah.
I think it's important, Michael, because you've been generous to Columbus as well. Younger guys, I mean, youth is relative, of course, but, guys like you and Ozzy, the early 2000s are becoming the next benefactors of Columbus. Why do you donate, and why do you think guys donate to Columbus, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, like, listen, it doesn't have to be a lot. Like, I'm not a huge donor, right? But like, I donate what I can. And sometimes I even donate my talents, right? Like,
yeah, well,
whatever it is you can do for the school, I think it's important, because, you want to leave it better than you found it. And you know what? There was guys before us that put in the work, and guys that donated their time, donated their talent and their treasure, right? Like that's kind of the way it works. That's our faith. And that's how Columbus has gone for the last, 60 plus years, right? Like we become better than we were the previous day. And that should be a mantra to live by, I think, in general, right? Like be a better man than you were the day before. And so the reason I give is because obviously, I see the fruits of what we do here. Like I can see the young men that we create here, good and bad, right? but I see what we create here. It's the real world. It's a true brotherhood. You don't really know until you go here. But yeah. I think even the guys that haven't done anything yet with the school or haven't given something to the school, I think they'll get a lot more out of it when they do it, because they'll realize like how much it actually helps the kids here in the school.
Pay it forward, brother. Yep. Pay it forward.
Yeah.
So, Mike, we could keep going. This has been a blast. I learned a lot myself. So generally, I do the sign off, but I got the master here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike. Why don't you sign us off?
All right, here we go.
Thank you, Michael.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a blast here on Looking Back with Lynskey. Season 4, episode 14 in the books. Mike Marinelli, Mike on the mic, John Lynskey signing off. Adelante, baby.
Adelante, boys. Thank you, Michael.
All righty.